The Towards Death. Chapter 1: The Beginning of the Ascent. I stood at the base of Mount Everest, staring up at the unforgiving peak. It was a place of death, and I knew that climbing it would be a test of my own mortality. But I had a mission: to find the body of an old colleague who had perished on the mountain years before. I was a climber, but I was also a seeker of the dead. The journey began with a sense of foreboding, as if the mountain itself was warning me of the danger that lay ahead. But I pushed on, driven by a need to uncover the truth. I knew that finding my old colleague's body would be difficult, but I was willing to do whatever it took to bring closure to his family and friends. As I started my ascent, the cold and the wind seemed to seep into my bones. It was like the mountain was trying to freeze me from the inside out, to make me part of its icy landscape forever. But I refused to be beaten. I climbed higher, my muscles straining with the effort, my breaths coming in ragged gasps. It wasn't just the mountain that was trying to kill me. The memories of my old colleague haunted me with every step. I remembered how we had laughed and joked on our previous climbs, but now his laughter was silent. The weight of his death pressed down on me, like a physical burden that I couldn't shake off. As I climbed higher, the darkness closed in around me. The sky was black as pitch, and the only light came from my headlamp. It was like I was in my own personal hell, with no escape from the cold, the wind, or my own thoughts. But still, I climbed. I was determined to find his body, no matter what the cost. The journey had just begun, and I knew that it would only get harder from here on out. But I was ready for whatever lay ahead. I was a seeker of the dead, and I would not be deterred. Chapter 2: The Ascent continues. The ascent had been grueling, but the ascent was even worse. I felt like I was being pulled down into the abyss, like the mountain itself was trying to swallow me whole. The darkness was all-encompassing, and the only sounds were the howling wind and the crunching of snow underfoot. Every step was a battle. I could feel my muscles screaming with the effort, my lungs burning with the thin air. It was like the mountain was trying to suffocate me, to extinguish the flame of life that burned within me. But still, I pressed on. The memories of my old colleague were like a weight around my neck. They pulled me down, making every step feel like a struggle. I remembered his smile, his laugh, and the feeling of camaraderie that we had shared on our previous climbs. But now, there was only silence. The wind howled like a chorus of ghosts, and I felt like I was being watched. Every shadow seemed to hold the promise of death, every gust of wind a warning. But I pushed through, driven by a need to complete my mission. The ascent was slow and tortuous, every inch a battle. But I was determined to find my old colleague's body, to bring him home. It was like a beacon of hope, a light shining through the darkness. And so, I climbed down, one agonizing step at a time. The mountain seemed to go on forever, an endless maze of snow and ice. But I refused to be beaten. I was a seeker of the dead, and I would not rest until my mission was complete. The journey had only just begun, and the mountain had more in store for me. But I was ready. I was determined. And I would not be stopped. Chapter 3: An Unforgettable Voice. Suddenly a ferocious storm struck, and the wind and snow tore up their clothes and became blind. I tripped and fell hard on the ice. I lay distraught and in pain. The storm continued to rage, and the fury did not abate. Then, I heard a voice. This is the voice of my old colleague speaking to me from beyond the grave. The words were faint and distorted and could hardly be heard beyond the howling wind. But I could feel their strength and weight. It was like he was offering me guidance and support from the other side. But the auditory hallucination soon turned into an haunting voice, which sent shivers down my spine. It spoke of death, of corruption, of the futility of my duty. The voice mocked me, mocking my efforts to find the body of an old colleague. I felt fear overtaking me, and I felt a fear I had never felt before. The voice was like a ghost, and it reminded me that death was always lurking before my eyes. The wind and snow hit my face, and I struggled to my feet. But I was in pain both physically and emotionally. The voice of my old companion changed from a lifeline to an unforgettable being, which reminded me that death was always near. The storm still raged, and I was alone in the mountains, facing my death and the elements. But now, I was also facing the specter of the voice of my old colleague. It's a reminder of the fragility of life. Chapter 4: The Ascent Continues. As I continued my ascent up the mountain, the storm showed no signs of abating. The wind howled like a pack of wolves, the snow pelting me like icy shrapnel. I felt like I was being torn apart, piece by piece. But I refused to be beaten. My old colleague's haunting voice may have shaken me, but it had not broken me. I was determined to find his body, to bring him home. The journey up the mountain intensified, every step a battle against the harsh environment. I could feel my muscles screaming with the effort, my lungs burning with the thin air. It was like the mountain was trying to crush me, to break me down into nothing. But still, I pressed on. The memories of our previous climbs were like a shield, protecting me from the worst of the storm. They were a reminder of what I was fighting for, of the importance of my mission. As I ascended further up, the mountain seemed to take on a life of its own. The snow and ice were like living creatures, attacking me from all sides. The wind was a constant roar, drowning out all other sounds. I could feel my own mortality, my own fragility, with every step. It was like the mountain was testing me, seeing if I had what it took to survive. And I was determined to show it that I did. The journey was long and treacherous, but I held on, driven by a fierce determination. I was a seeker of the dead, and nothing would stand in my way. Chapter 5: The Discovery. As I continued my ascent up the mountain, the storm raged on. The wind howled like a pack of wolves, the snow pelting me relentlessly. But I pushed on, driven by a need to complete my mission. And then, finally, I saw it, the outline of a body, partially buried in the snow. I hurried over to it, heart pounding in my chest. As I uncovered the body, tears streamed down my face. It was my old colleague, the one I had come all this way to find. He was frozen and lifeless, but I could still see the features of his face, the familiar lines and contours. I felt a sense of relief and closure, knowing that I had found him. But the journey was far from over. I still had to bring him home, to give him a proper burial. I carefully wrapped his body, the snow swirling around us. I felt a sense of sadness, knowing that this was the end of our journey together. But I was grateful for the memories we had shared, the camaraderie and sense of accomplishment. As I made my way down the mountain, carrying the body of my old colleague, I felt a sense of weight lifted off my shoulders. I had completed my mission, and I knew that his family would be grateful to have closure. The journey down was still treacherous, the storm still raging on. But I felt a sense of calm, knowing that I had accomplished what I had set out to do. And as I descended further down the mountain, I knew that I would carry the memories of our climb together with me always. Chapter 6: The Journey Home. As we reached the base camp, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I had completed my mission, and my old colleague was finally home. The funeral was a solemn affair, and I felt a sense of closure. But as I looked out over the mountains, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The climb had been treacherous, and the mountain had shown its wrath. It was a place of great danger and unpredictability, where one mistake could be fatal. And yet, I couldn't deny the sense of awe it had inspired in me. I knew that I would always carry the memories of our climb together with me, but I couldn't forget the dangers that came with it. The mountain was a force to be reckoned with, a reminder of our own mortality. As I made my way back to civilization, I felt a mix of emotions. The climb had been an incredible experience, but it had also been a reminder of the fragility of life. I knew that I would never forget the lessons it had taught me, the sense of determination and resilience that it had instilled in me. And as I looked up at the mountain one last time, I knew that I would always carry a healthy respect for its power and majesty. The journey had been challenging, but it had also been rewarding in its own way. And I was grateful for the memories it had given me, even as I left it behind.